Welcome back, Sons of Pitches. Second upload of the week because we had the return of the Champions League, Europa League, and the Conference League. So we're here to give you all the news and updates about that. It was a little exciting this game. All of our teams that we support also got to play. Unfortunately, it was the Europa League, not the Champions League, like we would like to be in, but it wasn't. But of course, we will start with the Champions League. The first game of the week was Man City at Copenhagen, who unsurprisingly lost to Man City. I thought they were able to keep up a little bit. I mean, Copenhagen were, unfortunately, this is the first time they've played competitively in like 60 days since they had that really big break, which is interesting to see in a couple of these leagues across Europe. But initial thoughts on the games? Someone hit me with it.
I wouldn't say it was too surprisingly. This is a Copenhagen team that I feel like have ruffled feathers, at least in their group stage. That's right. You know, they were in a group with Bayern, United, as well as Galatasaray, and we all know who isn't playing in European competition anymore. So, but unfortunately for Copenhagen, they couldn't beat the blue part of Manchester. I thought they scored kind of your classic underdog team's goal at home in the round of 16, and I did think for a second that the atmosphere was good enough. If they could have kept up in stride with City, that they could have pulled a point out of the game, but the air was taken right out of that balloon pretty quickly. Pretty fortunate goal. Bernardo Silva scored, and then after that, I don't think anybody thought Copenhagen was going to scrape a second goal. What I will say for Man City is it's kind of more of this shooting themselves in the foot defensively. I know Gianluca had some emojis to send in the group chat for Ederson. It was a characteristic mistake of Ederson, especially recently. They failed the deal with his misplaced pass forward out of the back, and Copenhagen pounced. So we'll see. I think if Man City have a mistake like that in the latter stages of the tournament against a more prominent side, a more elite team in Europe, who knows? It could be enough to see them exit the competition. But at least for right now, it looks like City got the job done. I'm sure they'll have a similar performance for the second leg.
Yeah, at home, I mean, obviously they'll be better favorites. I think if like you said, Copenhagen were to continue to ruffle some feathers, it was going to be in this home leg. I think it's unfortunate because, like you said, they got that bit of a scrappy goal right at home. I think if it wasn't for that break that I mentioned, they'd be a little bit more in form, a little bit more, like in shape, you know what I mean? Because that takes a lot. I mean, you can work out as much as you want, be in training, but like game experience is a completely different thing, especially under competitive like nature. And then to again play one of like the best, if not the best team in the world, you know what I mean? It's not an easy task. So it's a bit unfortunate for them.
The other thing too, they were bleeding new life into the side. I know I've been a follower of Magnus Madsen just from a Sorare perspective. He's somebody who I've actually owned in my gallery for a while, so I was actually pretty excited to see him make a move to Copenhagen and play in the Champions League. He made his debutante at home against City. I mean, what a big occasion. He scores the goal, and he was taking a lot of set pieces too, so it seems like it could be a Copenhagen that are kind of turning a new leaf as well. And even like you said, I mean, they haven't played a game in a couple months, so I didn't think it was their worst performance, but I agree. I'm sure if this took place like around the group stage time, they maybe could have held a draw against City, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, not too much else to add really from my perspective on the game. Like you said, I felt like Copenhagen really were undone by the fact they haven't played competitively in so long. They haven't like their last real competitive game was the last round of the Champions League, so it was always going to be a struggle for them from the start. I thought it was kind of insane that Scott McKenna was starting in the Champions League for them. At the back, that was kind of wild. I really did not expect to see that name in the back line or on the team sheet.
They have a couple names that have done a little European tour in that team. I like their little team.
Yeah, they definitely got some interesting players in the squad. But Man City, they're the first. They broke another record in the Champions League. They're the first team to score 3 or more goals in seven consecutive games, which is just absolutely absurd in my opinion, especially considering, I mean, Haaland's just coming back too, so I think that's kind of absurd. But like you said, Ange, I did have a lot to say about that Ederson mistake because I mean he's been doing it all season, and it's gonna come to the point where they're playing a real important game against a big team, and that's gonna be what undoes them. And it hasn't happened to them in the past, and they've been able to overcome all the other obstacles and win titles. But this feels like the year that the title race is so close, or even the race for the Champions League is so close that they could make a crucial mistake like that, and that's it. They're out.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and we've mentioned it, especially Yuji. I've mentioned it so many times that it really does start to feel like that's gonna hang over them, and one of these titles, either whether it be the league, the Champions League, or both, is gonna go down as a loss because of something like that. It feels that way.
It's hard to knock them about it because they're so prolific in attack that it really doesn't make a difference either way. But I mean, for me, it's becoming almost every week now that they're doing something like this, giving up easy goals. So it could be a problem.
Yeah. I mean, my 2 cents on the game, I mean, probably the result we expected, but I think City kind of left themselves open to a kind of shock result in that first half. They didn't necessarily seem 100% on it right away. You guys mentioned Grealish last week, but wow, what an awful season he's having, and then now an injury on top of it. So, I mean, they scored in the first 10 minutes, but I mean, yeah, I think there was definitely open for Copenhagen to kind of take a lead and maybe
honestly, even at the end of the game, Foden's third goal I think is kind of crucial actually because I mean everything's open for them to go to the Etihad and score first, and they're right back in the tie if it finished 2-1. So Foden's goal is definitely really important.
Absolutely. I mean, we're nitpicking a 3-1 win, but I mean we've grown to have higher expectations from City, and I think they kind of I wouldn't say lucky, but this is a performance that
those are human
could easily take advantage of.
Yeah, for sure.
You hit it on the nail with on the head of the nail with that one, because it is like City have set their own standards, so it's when they have a performance that probably is bang average or decent for most clubs is poor on their standards, so that's why they open themselves up to that kind of critique. But the other game on Tuesday night was Real Madrid at Leipzig. Which Real Madrid were missing their big talisman in Jude Bellingham, but Ange's boy Brahim Diaz filled those shoes really well and had an absolutely amazing goal, I thought, in that game. A lot of opportunities for both teams. Leipzig just not living up. We've talked about them dipping a bit a couple times, whether it be the league or the Champions League. But yeah, they couldn't take advantage of home field. And Brahim Diaz really kind of took center stage in that game. How do you guys feel?
I felt like Leipzig actually made a good account of themselves in this game, considering how they've been playing recently. I've been keeping an eye on them in the Bundesliga because it's been so intense recently, and they've been struggling. They've dropped points, I think, like 5 games in a row in the Bundesliga, but they really showed up in this game. I felt like they probably were the better side throughout. They definitely, in my opinion, deserved at least a point. Shesko's goal that got denied in the first half, like in the first 3 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah, that was
but I could see why the call was made. I understand where the goalkeeper interference comes from and why it was offsides, but at the same time, Lunin wasn't going to get to that ball regardless. So whether or not there's a man standing there or not, I still think you could probably allow that, but I see why it was called back. But overall, I felt like throughout the game, first half, second half, even after Madrid scored, I felt like Leipzig responded very well in this game. They were just really unfortunate. Lunin had a great game in net. I think he made a lot of good saves. He really stood out for me this week. I've kind of been touting him recently to you guys, saying that he's actually a pretty good goalkeeper, and even though he's been sitting on the bench for so long, covering Courtois' ass, he's not bad, and he's really showing that in the last couple of weeks. And he had an outstanding game this weekend, or this week, I should say.
Yeah, I think Leipzig are going to feel hard done by. I thought the goal should have stood. Maybe that's harsh. I didn't really care for the foul. I was very confused. I thought it was offsides that they were calling. That's how touch and going was. I forgot how the offsides rule worked for a second. I was analyzing the lines. I said, how is it possible that he's behind the last defender? But anyway, the game actually reminded me a lot of Leipzig-Leverkusen in the way that Leipzig came out. I mean, both the games are at home. They showed a ton of belief. They played their system. I love a nice little 4-4-2, a 2-striker tandem. It's the best, in my opinion. And the only difference was they just didn't get the goal. And I think if Lunin doesn't have his best performance, in my opinion, in a Real Madrid shirt so far in his young career, Leipzig might have come away with with the win on the night. I think they're lucky that it's 1-0, but I think Leipzig are going to have a lot of belief going into Madrid in a couple weeks because they showed that they could break this Real Madrid team down. It's a Real Madrid team that have a lot of injuries. It's been a makeshift back four. Even again on the night, it was Nacho Fernandez coming back into the side. He's probably the fourth center back on the team sheet. And they're playing Tchouaméni still at center back as well. I know he's filled in well, but we'll see. I've been kind of wondering if Real Madrid's injuries are going to take a toll eventually, and maybe it's just because they have so much class and talent in the squad, and somebody who I think is one of the best coaches to ever live, in Ancelotti, that they continue to get the job done. But hey, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Leipzig grabbed a goal or two in the second leg.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Leipzig, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, their key players in Xavi Simons and Openda this season both didn't really get much of a chance at net. I think Openda, I was looking, only had one shot. I mean, young Ben Sesko, who's up and coming, did get like 6 chances. He had the bulk of their opportunities up front. But that's not their main guy right now, and so I guess credit to Real Madrid for taking those 2 players out of the game, because that's obviously key for Leipzig. So in the return leg, if they can get those 2 players kicking, and if the team can perform well, yeah, like you said, there's an opportunity. It's only 1-0 on aggregate. But then along with Gia, I think Lunin had a great game, and I know Courtois is out for the season if I'm not wrong. I think come next season, if Lunin keeps this performance throughout the season, it's going to be hard for Courtois to just walk back in, because
I'll be honest with you, if Courtois walks back in the team, Lunin should go. Lunin should go get a number 1 job somewhere, because he's earned it, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. With these performances, you can't sit the bench. You need to go. You need to be playing starting minutes every time. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting choice for Ancelotti in the upper echelons of Real Madrid. Jay, did you have anything to add about that game?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a little bit of kind of similar to the last game, where I think Leipzig will kind of think it was a missed opportunity this game, because you're going against a Madrid. I mean, even a Madrid that's kind of down a few people is still ridiculous.
Right.
But yeah, you got a makeshift back line a bit. You've got some players playing out of position. You're looking at third or fourth choice guys in at center back, and yeah, you probably at home you think you may be able to nick one away. But yeah, I think like Ange said, I don't know if they got that big game performance in them. They don't necessarily show up for the important ones. Like, they're talented, they're young and talented, but I think they're still missing a few pieces to really compete at this level.
Yeah, and with that game coming to a conclusion, we do move on to Wednesday, where probably a game, I guess on paper for me, I know this team has been coming under scrutiny from us and just in general, but I just would think Bayern would squeak the edge over Lazio in this game, but that is not what happened. They did lose back-to-back. Bayern just looking shockingly un-Bayern-esque. In our group chat, we've been talking about Tuchel, if his head is going to be on the chopping block in terms of the managerial position. But yeah, Immobile converted that penalty. Bayern went down to 10 men, and it was just a messy game from the Munich players. But how did you guys feel?
I actually want to give Lazio a lot of credit. I really enjoyed this game. I know it was a 1-goal affair, and Bayern didn't have much to offer, but I was pretty impressed with Lazio. Maurizio Sarri and his Sarri ball is something that always caught my attention, especially when he pulled it out in Napoli, and I thought he did a pretty good job at Chelsea as well. And this Lazio team don't play Sarri ball as fluid as I thought they would have, with the likes of Luis Alberto, who really is one of my favorite Serie A players I've ever seen. I know they lost Milinkovic-Savic, but the player they brought in to replace him in Matteo Guendouzi, I thought was man of the match. I thought Guendouzi was unbelievable. His ability to pick up the ball from deep. He was a metronome at times, switching the ball from left to right. And Bayern had a tough time dealing with Felipe Anderson and Gustav Isaacson. Isaacson is a player that they got from Michelin that really had a really poor start to the Serie A. He wasn't fitting in as well. He's made himself into a starter now. But yeah, I just felt like it was a lot of the same things they struggled with against Leverkusen. It was the attacks from wide, where Lazio were kind of doing damage, and it was very strange. Now, we got to talk about the red card, because I thought that was just an awful decision. I know he stamps on, I think it was Isaacson in the box, but I don't think that was enough for a penalty. If you watch it in live time, I think everybody was shocked. I know the Bayern fans were absolutely appalled. I know Upamecano received some abuse, which is terrible, and Bayern kind of threw water on that fire, which was terrible to see occur. But I didn't agree with the sending off at all. I thought that was harsh. I was surprised that he went to De Ligt because there was a little scuffle between De Ligt and Tuchel. Some backhanded comments. De Ligt was asked, if he wasn't being picked because of fitness, and De Ligt's quote was, "I'm top fit." So there's a lot of questions to be asked of Tuchel, and we'll see. I was telling Gianluca it's going to be a little space we have to watch if he fields De Ligt as a starter in the second leg. But there's definitely been turmoil in the Bayern locker room, and I can't say I'm particularly surprised that Lazio were able to pull the rabbit out of the hat and get the goal. I mean, no, I don't want to disrespect Lazio. They've kind of been on fire. I'm pretty sure they've won their last 7 or 8 games, right? That was a lie because they lost to Atalanta, but at least in the Serie A, they have had some pretty good momentum. So it was nice to see them win. It was great for Italy's coefficient too. So I enjoyed the game.
Yeah, for me, I've actually thought Bayern didn't play actually all that bad in the first half. I just felt like they couldn't finish. They were creating all the chances. Their interplay around the box was actually pretty impressive. I thought they had that one sequence where there was a few 1-2 passes right at the top of the 18. And I think Musiala it was that blazed over. But I mean, on another day, I think they score those chances, and probably the result's different even at halftime. But the fact that Lazio, I think, made it to halftime 0-0 gave them so much belief. And they came out in the second half a completely different side. They were much more attacking. They were able to find a lot more space, and that was really where you saw Bayern begin to fall apart. That was how they fell apart against Leverkusen, was in transition when the players out wide began to find space and make runs in behind, and that's exactly what happened in this game. I mean, the penalty comes from a run being made in behind by Felipe Anderson. A couple balls get played through, and all of a sudden they're in the box. It wasn't a long exchange or possession for Lazio. They just made a couple quick passes, and all of a sudden Bayern were out at sea defensively. So I think that there's got to be a lot of questions, not just asked of the players, but of Tuchel too, because clearly there has to be a disconnect here. I mean, he tried to change systems last week. He went back to the normal system this week. It looks like the players don't know what they're doing. It looks like they don't know what their instructions are on the field. It doesn't look like anybody knows what their role is, who's supposed to be going where and when at what time. And it just looks like a big clusterfuck. I really don't know how else to describe it. It's just a mess at this point at Bayern. And, he's lost more games than Nagelsmann at this point. So I really think he's just sitting on a ticking time bomb now before he gets the chop. I really won't be shocked if he's not there in 3 weeks when the second leg happens. I don't know about how you guys feel, but yeah, it's just shocking, really.
Everything I've been reading is that they basically fully back him and have no plans to move on from him, which is a bit surprising.
Yeah, I saw that today too, which is crazy.
I mean, when you think about it, we talk about this a lot. We got to just give the manager time and back him a bit, because they've kind of become a team. If you look at all the big clubs, they've gone through more managers than anybody, really. In the last 4 or 5 seasons, I think they've had at least 3 or 4 coaches, if not more.
Nagelsmann, Tuchel. There's 3 right there.
Exactly. So, I mean, yeah, you want to move on from him, but you also want to give a coach time to kind of establish themselves. And yeah, like you said, I think he's panicking and kind of just trying to see what sticks.
He's throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks, literally.
Yeah. Give everything a shot, see what works well. And I mean, and I know you mentioned you weren't necessarily too convinced of the penalty. I think that's pretty much a clear penalty every day.
No, I didn't think it was a sending off.
Sending off? Yeah.
I was shocked, absolutely shocked to see the red card come out when that happened.
It was certainly reckless. I think it could have been a yellow.
Yeah, I didn't want to comment on Tuchel, but we were just talking about the red card. We have seen in these past couple months, every time VAR goes to a replay and it's a slow-mo, and then something happens where the studs end up on the player's leg, regardless of the context, they some reason almost always go to a red. Actually, the Benfica game today had a stamp for their pen, and it was only a yellow. It ended up in a sending off because it was a second yellow. But it's just weird that they just keep taking things in this context of slow motion. The game is not played in slow motion. You know what I mean? It's played in live time.
But even in this case, I mean, the referee didn't even consult.
He
seemed pretty. He seemed pretty.
straight to the red card. I thought it was absurd too because he gives a penalty not for nothing. Like, isn't that already damage enough? Right. How are you going to go send it? Like, what happened to double jeopardy where you don't give a penalty in a red card?
I was going to ask that. I didn't want to sound stupid. I thought, is that only keepers? Yeah. Double jeopardy only apply to keepers? Or is
I thought that applied to everything, but apparently not anymore.
I think it's more like on that 1v1 thing.
I thought the weirdest thing too is like, if Isaksen was in on goal, about to be 1v1, and Upamecano just absolutely stamps on him in the box, then I think that would have constituted for a red card as well. But I mean, there was like 6 or 7 other players in the box too. Right. It's not like Isaksen was 20 yards sprinting towards goal.
He wasn't denied a clear and obvious goal opportunity.
I think the point is where he catches him above the ankle. I don't think the rest of it doesn't matter. I think if this is at midfield, he catches him above the ankle. Typically, it's always a straight red. But I think the direction that it came from is a little. I mean, I'm biased because I did break my ankle in that same manner. But I think from that direction, it's a little bit. I don't know. It's tough. It's close.
Yeah. There was a couple of alarm bells ringing on the night for Bayern. I think Gianluca brought it up too. I mean, not only could they not finish, they couldn't put a ball on goal. I mean, when's the last time Bayern haven't registered a shot on target? I don't know. And it's back-to-back losses to Bayern. The last time they lost back-to-back games, 2019. I'll give you a guess. Who do you think they lost the first of those 2 games to?
Oh man,
like a Leverkusen or something.
Ding, ding, ding! It was Bayer Leverkusen, and on the same occasion, it's Bayer Leverkusen that they lose first 2 again. So we'll see. I mean, is it really alarm bells? I mean, I just said Bayern haven't lost back-to-back games for about 5 seasons, so we'll see. It's just the expectations that come with an elite club like Bayern. There's some fans that are saying Tuchel's the worst coach that Bayern's ever had in their history. I mean, to have a Champions League winner be your worst coach, I would take that personally.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting for Bayern because they're in a league that they've dominated, right? So it's almost expectation to win, but in reality, no other league is much like that except for like PSG and Ligue 1. It shouldn't be an expectation that you win the league. It should be an expectation you compete for it. But I mean, like I said, and G was saying, Tuchel keeps switching up the formation. Yeah, like you said, he doesn't know what he's doing. But I want to critique though. Harry Kane was on fire right when he first joined Bayern. Absolute just monster. I think he had 29 goal contributions this season already. But since January, he's played 8 matches and he's only put the ball in the back of net on 3 occasions. Almost every time he doesn't score, Bayern essentially lose. So it's interesting that he's just not on form because that's the talisman. They brought him in to score goals to win the Champions League, to win trophies, and he's slowed down a lot. Now is it him on misform? I mean, every player deserves a little bit of a downtime, but it also could be the Tuchel thing.
Make a point here. I don't know. I wouldn't say this is a point, but I want to hear what you guys think personally, because for me, over the years, seeing the Bayern team, they've always had a type of striker that's kind of a target man, like someone for the midfielders, like a Musiala and a Sané to look for. Mm-hmm. I feel like Harry Kane doesn't really play like that. He drops deep more, and he finds himself side by side pretty much with Musiala most of the time. I think that's having an effect on their attack.
Yeah, and I think it should realistically, because the way Muller has played a lot is almost like a second striker, So in an opportunity where Kane drops back into midfield, you would think he could go in there and be the number 9 for that period of play. And I feel like he's the perfect strike partner for him. I don't know if it's maybe he's getting up there in age and really doesn't have it anymore, but I'm really surprised it's not working as well.
I think only recently too, because like I said, Kane was on fire before the new year.
Well, something's definitely changed in the way that they're playing.
In the last,
it's pretty clear.
I think it's the change.
Sané hasn't scored in 17 games. He was on fire to start the beginning of the season. Something's wrong there.
I think when you're constantly changing, you now have players who are, I don't want to say one-trick ponies, but they're used to playing a specific way and doing it a certain way. So when you're trying to ask everybody to switch up a little bit, then you're losing the best out of the best. So now your best players are just above average. So Harry Kane's a world-class player. You ask him to take away half his game, he's no longer a world-class player.
Yeah.
So it's the balance they got to find with getting everybody back into form and playing a system that fits everybody. That's a challenge Tuchel has.
Something else I think that's been really noticeable the last two games, especially not so much against Lazio, but definitely against Leverkusen. The players are losing their head way more than I have ever seen Bayern Munich players lose their head in my life. I mean, if you see some of the reactions after things don't go their way or they concede a goal, in my opinion, I've never seen any Bayern Munich player do that in my life. So I mean, something you can. It's pretty obvious. I think. I think we can all see that there's something wrong, and Tuchel needs to start fixing it fast.
You know what? I'll tell you this. I think this is probably the first time they feel truly threatened in the league.
Right.
Yeah.
And in years.
They don't know how to
Years.
react.
Yeah,
And
actually,
I
that's
think
true. That's a good point.
They've had this mentality for 10 years. I mean, from the president to the fans down, everybody believes they are the rightful holders of the trophy every year, no matter what. No matter what team comes, they are the rightful owners. And now they're literally coming from behind. They've lost to their title rivals. And I believe drawn the first round they played, right? So they haven't beaten them. They're down a few points. And now you've got your core of your best players with Muller and Neuer. They're past their best. They're kind of falling off a bit. And you're struggling a bit with your coach and kind of gathering everybody together. You got fighting within the locker rooms. They're in uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a bit of a elitist mentality who they expect everything to just come to them, and now they have to fight for it a bit harder, and they're not really ready for it. But yeah, I don't know how they recover from it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch as the season continues and the Champions League continues. See if Bayern can regain a little bit of their former glory. But moving on to the last game of the Champions League week, we did only have the four. We did have a Paris Saint-Germain victory versus Real Sociedad in Paris. Real Sociedad kind of like giving up on themselves a little bit in the last half hour. I think they held well for the good first hour. But then they just kind of had to lose pace. They are playing away. I will be enjoying this game when it returns to Spain. I think they still have a good chance to bring it back because PSG are known to kind of fumble the bag a little bit. But yeah, Mbappe scores, who actually also we'll probably talk about a little bit, broke some news today that he will be leaving at the end of the season on a free. A lot of clubs are already considering that move, that option. But as far as the game itself, how did you guys feel?
Yeah, it was PSG playing host to Sociedad at the Parc des Princes in the City of Love on the Day of Love, and as all things should be, PSG won the game. But I think Real Sociedad actually came out flying. I thought they were the better team in the first half, to be honest. They asked a lot of questions of Paris's backline. I know one of the stats they said in the broadcast was PSG and Sociedad were actually the two teams that pressed the most in the group stage, and I think you saw it. I think it was evident on the pitch. I thought it was a high-flying affair, and yeah, I completely agree. I think Sociedad almost looked like they kind of run out of gas and then became a little too individualistic. I know Kubo was trying to take things on his shoulders and make things happen in the last 20 minutes, and it looked like it was going to be a really solid team performance, and I think PSG's extra bit of quality on the night just got the job done for them. But I agree. I think Sociedad should definitely believe in themselves. It's a PSG squad that haven't gotten past the round of 16 in the last 3 seasons. And I think the first 45, really the first 60 minutes for Sociedad should give them belief that they can grab a couple goals and hit PSG with a sucker punch. So we'll see. I agree. I think there's more to come from this tie. But as far as PSG, I thought Zaire Emery was great. He was very progressive. Always asking questions and flying around the pitch. He's kind of reminds me of a wasp, to be honest. I know I got to watch him twice as they were in Milan's group, and he was great. Fabian Ruiz made kind of a return. He had a pretty good assist, somebody that kind of flew under the radar as a move from Napoli. I know my dad was never really a fan of him, and was actually pretty glad that he left Napoli, but it was cool to see him get a run in the side. And I wanted to shout out Beraldo, too, young left back. He's recently been blended to the team, Brazilian-born. I believe he's from Sao Paulo. Yeah, he is. Somebody who I actually had a little bit of an eye on over the summer from watching the Brazilian League. He was one of the players that they talked about a lot in all the Sao Paulo games and touted him for a move, and I think he's done pretty well. He made his Champions League debut as a starter and got the dub, so kudos to him.
Yeah, personally, I felt like if there was any if there was a tie that would surprise us in this round of 16, I thought Sociedad would be the team to do it. They didn't lose in the group stages at all. They only conceded twice in their 6 games, which is incredible. But I felt like you guys said I thought they played fantastic for 60 minutes. I think they were really unlucky to concede in the way that they did. Hamari Traore was fantastic all game, marking Mbappe pretty much out of the game. And then what do you know, when he goes off to get treatment because he collides with Mbappe, that's what the goal comes from, because he's not there to man mark him on the corner like he had been doing on every other set piece throughout the game. And they put Kubo, which I thought was a wild decision in the first place. They put Kubo on Mbappe, and we all know how that's going to go. So that really, I felt like it almost looked to me like PSG were unsure of themselves again. Like we've seen them become in the last 2 or 3 seasons now in the Champions League, where they're like, oh shit, I don't know if we can do this actually. And they were very surprised, I think, by Sociedad's ability to press them. I also think that PSG is really not the best team in the world at building out from the back, and the fact that they play in such a, I hate to say farmers league, but they don't really have such a competitive game week in and week out, and they're not pressed in that way every week. I think they really struggled with that, and that's why you saw so much success from Sociedad in the first half. But once that goal went in, it seemed like the PSG players all of a sudden believed in themselves a lot more. They felt like they could find inroads and really break down Sociedad defensively, which they weren't able to do really at all until that point. And from there, it was pretty much one-way traffic for PSG. Although I think if that shot, I think it was Bryce Mendes that hit it right on the cusp of halftime, right off the crossbar. If that goes in, I think this tie is completely different. I think PSG would struggle to even come away with a draw in the second half.
Yeah, I have to agree. After that first goal, PSG definitely started rolling. They definitely felt more comfortable and sure of themselves. But Real Sociedad, though, you mentioned, G, they only conceded twice in the group stage, then obviously conceded twice on Wednesday. But also, they've been in a run of games. I think they haven't scored a goal since the 23rd of January.
They've been struggling in La Liga lately.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound like a lot, but like you said, they've played 5 games. And even before that, they only managed to squeak out like 1-goal victories.
They've hit a tough run of form at really the worst possible time.
Yeah,
even for the league too, because they're falling out of the European places now.
Right, they just can't find the back of the net.
I saw them in the group stage. I mean, we were Benfica's group, and they had some runs where they looked fantastic for some periods of play, like unplayable, like they were playing us off the field. Right. So I mean, they have it. They'd have to kind of get back to into the swing of things. But I'll give you some rare PSG defense. That lineup is probably only contains 6 people they'd like to start. So that's not really something you get out of PSG when they kind of face any bit of adversity and actually overcome it. So I'll give them a little bit of credit there. But yeah, I agree with G. This is the one I had my eye on for an upset, and a little disappointed we didn't get it. But there's definitely some hope with the return leg. I think that should be a tasty affair.
Yeah, and I mean, Real Sociedad also have a couple of injuries that I think are kind of key in their midfield. I'm gonna butcher these, but Mikel Oyarzabal and and Alvaro Odriozola typically start for them on and control the game for them, and then Kieran Tierney, who obviously is a pretty decent player, usually on the fullback position. So that's something they're missing, I think, and of course you want, when you're playing a team of PSG's caliber, obviously. They're still pretty good, as much as we talk a little bit of crap about them. You want all the talent you can put on the field, and they just didn't have that. So I'm not sure when the predicted return dates of those players are, but if they can get a couple of those players back in the return leg, play in Spain, that we could see something special out of them. But if we are all set, we will move to the Europa League, where we all have a nice deep stake in it. So come these next couple rounds, we might be having some head-to-head matches, especially the fact that I think we all won today. Oh, except for G, who tied, but still, that's still a progress. You didn't lose, so you're still progressing forward.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'll take the draw. Yeah. I guess since we're talking about it already, we might as well go right to the Roma game. But so we played Feyenoord today. It's the 3rd year in a row in the European competition that we're playing Feyenoord. So I don't know, when I saw the draw, I was kind of expecting an easy win, really. But since things have transpired in the way that they have since then, I wasn't totally confident going into this game. But when I saw the players that Feyenoord had out, I was immediately much more confident. However, that changed very quickly. But Feyenoord were out Bijlo, who's pretty much the Dutch national team's number one goalie at this point. No Hertruda, no Quentin Timber. Santiago Jimenez didn't start. He was on the bench, which I thought was absolutely shocking. I really couldn't believe that he didn't start this game. But yeah, I thought we had a little bit more hope than I originally anticipated. But we just didn't play well today at all, really. I just didn't think we could create anything. Lukaku, I know he scored, but he was kind of a ghost, really, throughout this game. He really was non-existent. He doesn't look himself lately. Dybala as well doesn't really look himself. I'm not really too sure what's going on there. Personally, to me, he doesn't look fully fit. I don't know if he's been fully fit this whole time in the last 3 or 4 weeks now, but he just doesn't look like he's playing up to scratch and up to his standard. But I want to spotlight Eduardo Bove because I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I think if I was to name a Roma player of the season at this point in time, from what I've seen so far, it would be Eduardo Bove. He's incredible. I think if there's someone who's in line to be the next Roma captain, it's Eduardo Bove. He's another Roman-born boy. He knows the club. He's been through it since he was a kid. And just the effort he puts in on the field, man. I could watch this kid play all day, every day. He never stops running for 90 minutes. He'll die on that field if he has to, if it means winning the ball, and even winning a 50-50 challenge. Like, he does not care. He puts his life on the line. He contributes in every facet of the game, in attack, in midfield, in defense. And it's just awesome to see an all-action midfielder like that because we really don't have him that much anymore. But other than that, I would say I'm pretty satisfied actually coming out of this game with a draw. I think Feyenoord would probably feel a little hard done by that they didn't come out with something more. They definitely had the better chances. They hit the post a couple times. But other than that, not really too much else.
I can chime in. I think I'm glad that you respected Feyenoord because Feyenoord, in my opinion, there's a couple players in this Feyenoord team that are going to be household names pretty soon. I do try to keep up on the Eredivisie and especially the goal scorer, Paixão. I think he's like 100% going to move.
Oh, he was absolutely the kid is the best player on the pitch by a mile today.
Yeah, if you haven't watched this kid play, you got to go watch Igor Paixão. I think he's unbelievable. His technical ability, dribbling. He's getting to the point where he commands a ton of attention, especially in the Eredivisie. He got the goal on the night. And even Mats Wiefer has been touted a couple times with making a move to, I think, Atletico Madrid. We're pretty close to getting his signature in January. I think they've agreed on a pre-contract for him to join. To be honest, there's some players in this Feyenoord team that would start for Roma. A couple really good outfits.
Absolutely.
And I agree. I'm going to be honest. I thought Feyenoord should have won. And I think so far in this De Rossi tenure at Roma, has the level of playing increased? Yes. But they really haven't impressed me results-wise. I think this Roma side have beaten the teams that we expect them to beat. They've lost to the team that we expect them to lose to, and I think they tied a team that honestly is on their level. I mean, you guys traded European finals, and today was a draw. So I actually voted on an online poll on Twitter. I feel pretty good. Only 8% of people that voted had a tie. I was one of them. So how's that for a little knowledge?
Yeah, you're right. I think Feyenoord were much better. The only thing is I will say Svilar needs to be the number one. I'm sick of seeing Rui Patricio at this point.
I thought Svilar was actually pretty good.
He was great today. I mean, you can just see how much more confidence he instills in the back line. Even when he just has the ball at his feet, he's so much quicker. He's so much calmer. Every time Rui Patricio, even the ball doesn't even have to go towards him, I start getting nervous because I'm just not really sure what he's gonna do, and I'm not really sure he knows what he's gonna do either. So I just think it's about time we give Svilar the number one for at least the rest of the season because he deserves it. I think for his performance he's putting in the Europa League, he's been more than steady, and I think it's just he deserves it. There's nothing really else to say. Rui sucks. I hate to say it because I really liked Rui Patricio a lot over the years.
I think it's his birthday today too.
It is his birthday today, but Milan Skriniar gave him a great gift of showing him how to play goalkeeper today. So hopefully he takes that and runs with it.
Yeah, his ears are ringing right now on his birthday.
Time for Rui Patricio to pack it up and come home to Lady.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it might be time.
Yeah, I did want to ask you, G, before we moved, kind of a general idea of how you feel about the team. So obviously, De Rossi and didn't let you forget that the first 3 wins you guys played were against relegation contenders, right? Where you were feeling really good, and then of course you've now played Inter, got beat, and then drew this game against Feyenoord. Do you feel like it's still progress moving forward? I know a couple of, like Angelino sat the bench in this one. I know he had a subpar performance last game. But now Chris Smalling's coming back from injury. He's been on the bench, soon to be introduced, I'm sure. Tammy's should be back soon. So in general, do you think De Rossi will continue to improve this team? Do you think it was like a little bit of like you guys had easy fixtures? What are your overall thoughts about?
I honestly, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm shocked at how well he's done so far. Mm-hmm. I think he's shown. Okay, obviously we've beaten the bottom three teams in Serie A. We probably should have gotten something from the Inter game, but we didn't, and we didn't play well today. Mm-hmm. But I think that he's shown that there's something to build on.
Okay,
he's shown that there's still an identity in this team. He's shown that the players believe in him. They believe in his ideas and his new tactics. Mm-hmm. And I think that shows in the fact that the players have taken to them so quickly. I mean, you see some of the change in the players and their attitude. Someone like Pellegrini, who now all of a sudden he's acting like a captain again in these last 5 games. Until this point, he's been pretty much non-existent for the entire season. Yeah. So I think it may not obviously, if you just look at it black and white, it doesn't look like we've changed that much. It doesn't look like much progress has been made, but I think there's definitely a lot of positives to take from each game. Personally, for me, I see improvement each game.
Nice, perfect. So another game that happened earlier today, one of the first games of the Europa League, was the Sporting game. Obviously, I'm happy we did go away to Young Boys and we did win 3-1. It wasn't all super comfortable. I think Young Boys did give themselves a little bit of credit with a couple of chances that got ruled out offsides by VAR, or just in general offsides. Those specific chances for me highlighted a little bit that sometimes Sporting's back line likes to fall asleep a little bit when we get comfortable. But granted, we did hold a good offensive line. We do hold a little bit of a higher line. And obviously they did well to do so because those goals were caught offsides. But another good Gyökeres performance, a goal today. Edwards did get the start. I know I mentioned the other day that he's been riding the pine, but he did get the start today, and I think he performed pretty well. I think he tried to prove himself a little bit. Didn't get on the score sheet or anything, but I think he did well by his own accounts. And then I also think that Bragança had a decent game. He comes under scrutiny. A lot of opposing fans, a lot of the Sporting fans obviously love him because he's a little academy lad. But I think he's beginning to prove himself. I think he hasn't reached the levels that he was originally touted to, but I think he's good enough to come in and obviously play a Europa League fixture like this. Ignacio had another really good goal. Actually, matter of fact, I almost forgot. Edwards had the cross in for the own goal, for the first goal for Sporting, so he technically assisted it because that was on its way to Gyökeres if the defender hadn't slapped that in the back of the net, which is actually a great finish. If you guys watch it back, he side volleys that perfectly into the roof of the net. It was beautiful. But overall, it was a really good performance from them. It's good to see that we went away, took the dub. I feel confident coming home that we just have to hold, obviously, a 2-goal lead and just not stoop down to the level and just to have a good performance, and we'll make it through. I don't know if you guys have any comments or questions for me, but
I did have Oh, you can get Jeff.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it was pretty impressive because you guys did do a little bit of rotation. Granted, you still have your main guys going in there,
right.
But
I was
you're
gonna
down
make
your
the same point. Yeah,
Coates. And
did you see why he didn't play? He was on the team sheet actually. He bowed out because he didn't want to play on the AstroTurf. I saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Really? I thought he was injured.
No, I saw.
Wow.
I was actually watching a So Rare podcast. There's some guys that were pissed that had him fielded in their lineups, but that was what I saw going around was that I guess he chose not to play, and I know it's listed as a muscle injury, but as far as I know, he played on the weekend, the full match. So it had to do with the pitch.
He is getting up there in age, so I mean, little rotation things. I'm not surprised if he ever has to step one out. But no, I will say it's pretty impressive that you guys are able to rotate a bit and then introduce a few young kids into the team and get some meaningful minutes. And now you come home with a 2-goal lead where you probably can do it again and then still be ready for. I know we've been talking about it. We've got a lot of good games coming up between Benfica and Sports. We got 3 times in 4 weeks or so. So I think this is a very good time to get that result.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing. I mean, these Europa League fixtures, it's no 2-3 weeks breaks in between the next tie like it is in the Champions League. These teams will be playing again in a week's time. And I was going to say the same thing because these are the types of fixtures where, I think if maybe Benfica and Porto's results on the weekend were different, that Amorim, I think he would have had more to think about. I think he probably had less pressure on his head to make rotational changes. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now. I mean, they play 4 more games just in the month of February alone. So we'll see what Sporting does. But yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure you were impressed to see some key figures in the 11 rotated and still a pretty up to standard performance for at least how the way Sports have been playing this year. So hats off to them. I think Amorim's are managing the situation well. We'll see how they do. Obviously, there's a big tie, the Portuguese Cup coming up. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys brought that up. And Jay reminded me about the young kids that came on later. It's funny because I think we're going to make a similar point, but in the opposite way. I think Amorim handles squad rotation well and handles game management well, and I think Jay already knows what I'm going to say later. But to stay on Sporting, it's nice to see that, like, because I had mentioned at the last pod that that Hjulmand and Morita are like the only options in the midfield, and I don't like to rotate it too much. But Daniel Bragança comes in, not an overly exceptional, like, man of the match performance, but good enough to play. We win the game, and that's what's important. He's getting the result here, so it's good that, especially in a season where we're really, really, really competing for the title, and we can still rotate players in these matches in the Europa League and progress further, and get closer and closer to winning as much silverware as potentially possible. And of course, the 2 kids that came in, Rafael Nel, who I wasn't overly familiar with, but I knew he gets his name tossed around every now and then. He's a striker. And then Koba, who came from, I'm already drawing a blank on where he came. We just signed him in January from Estoril. He got introduced. I think he looked good, actually. He has a little bit of flair to him, which I like. He also has a bit of physical presence, too. So he was winning a couple duels, winning a couple of dribbles. So that was really nice. So it's another player that, if we have to rotate every now and then, and maybe in a game that we're more comfortable, he can step in, which is nice. But yeah, overall, just a solid performance from them. And that, of course, leads us, I think the next game would be you, Angelo, where Milan had a nice 3-0 victory, pretty comfortable. All being said, by the end of the game, I don't know if he felt comfortable the whole time. But Leao did score. We did talk about how he hasn't been scoring, and of course he did. It's almost like some of these guys watch the pod. Tuchel puts in Guerrero at left back. I don't know. Must be getting some influence. But please, Ann, share your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased. I know I've been saying in the last couple podcasts I've been waiting for the Europa League to kick off because I just don't feel like we're really in a race for the Scudetto, and I can't really see us falling out of the top 4. So this is really our only chance at some joy. It's certainly our only chance we have left at a trophy, and I think Milan came out and played like they knew it was their only chance at a trophy. I was very surprised at how fiery Milan came out. Pioli opted to go with Yunus Musa in the midfield instead of Adli, which I was kind of surprised with because obviously Adli has French roots. He's played in Ligue 1. I would have thought he would have been better suited for this game, but Pioli went with Musa. He introduced Reinders back in the team who was suspended on the weekend. So when I first saw the team sheet, I thought, oh, shit. I mean, we're going with 2 midfielders who haven't really played at all together this season. I think Reinders has the most minutes for Milan this year. So I was happy to see him reintroduced, but we look great. Loftus-Cheek, a brace again. It's his second brace in about a month's time. I was pleased with him, and I don't know if anyone else watched the game. I know it's easy to say this because he scored 2 headers. I think he was the tallest player on the pitch. I think he was taller than every single Rennes player. He looked like a Greek god, to be honest, roaming around the field. The way he picked up the ball, it seemed like he had absolutely no pressure to play. So he scored the brace, and then Teo Hernandez, it's being named Teo now in the media. What a goal they combined for. Leao's bringing back the number 10 flair. He looked like Ronaldinho on that goal, dare I say it, the little back heel. And I think it shows a lot about his mindset. He's not letting the naysayers get to him. He's playing with a smile on his face, his trademark smile. We all know the type of mentality and happiness you have to play with to pull out a back heel like that. I know it was a stage in the game where Milan weren't really pressured and were kind of steamrolling at that point, but it was a great pass. It was a really good finish, in my opinion. And I like the celebration a lot. I don't know if anybody saw it, but he looked super relieved to have scored. I know
I was going to say that.
He's been taking a lot of shit on not finding the back of the net in the Serie A, but he's been really good in this European campaign. He had his best performance of the season at home against PSG in the group stage. It was a performance that gave us a lot of hope that we would stay alive in the Champions League. Ultimately, we finished third, and that's why we found ourselves hosting Rennes. But he looked really good, and I liked when he made his way back to the halfway line for kickoff. He was kind of pointing to the Curva Sud and saluting them where the Milan Ultras stand, as if to say, like, don't worry about me, I'm staying. There was a lot of noise being made in the paper, especially with the rumor of Mbappe's departure earlier in the week that I guess is now confirmed that Leao would be top of the list to replace him. So it was kind of cool to see him be relieved with scoring, but also kind of pledge his allegiance in a way to Milan. I really enjoyed the game. I remember when the draw came out that I was kind of nervous about getting Rennes, because to be honest, there's some names in this Rennes team that I actually think are pretty talented. I really like Terrier. Cali Mwenda was one of my favorite players, favorite youngsters when he was at Lens. I thought he was ripping up Liga. He got his move to Rennes and hasn't really done much with it. We saw Amin Gouiri come off the bench, someone who was on fire that one season for Nice. A lot of people thought he was going to be France's next big talisman. He was so good with both feet. I thought he came down and caused some problems. I know Nate alluded to Rennes having some chances towards the end of the game, and I agree. I think they gave Milan some things to think about, but I don't think we were ever. I don't think we ever really looked like conceding, to be honest. And speaking of the defense, I mean, we saw Malik Thiaw come back, which is a huge addition. Because this Kier Matteo Gabbia partnership, although it's been going a lot better than I certainly ever would have thought. I think every Milan fan's been pleasantly surprised at the duo that they formed, but we know we have probably three center backs that are better than the duo that we've been fielding. So it was nice to see Thiaw come back, get some minutes in the legs. But yeah, good team performance. I'm glad. It looks like Milan's going to take the competition seriously, and I'd be shocked if we didn't go through at this point.
Yep, I personally felt like Milan came out to send a message in this game to everybody else in the competition, that they wanted everyone to know that they want to be the team to beat. I thought they were on fire. They looked like
same thing. Yeah,
they looked like they wanted to score 5 before halftime. They probably I don't know if they could have, but I think they certainly came out with the mentality that they wanted to.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's like you said, it's great to see Leao find the back of the net, and like you said, I that was the most noticeable thing for me, was his celebration. He looked like a man who had the weight of the world lifted off his shoulders after that going in. So yeah. I think that's great for him and his confidence.
Yeah, me too. And I want to big up Florenzi too. Calabria was injured last game. A lot of Milan fans on Twitter were pretty excited, as fucked up as it sounds, to see our captain go off injured. I'm not gonna lie, I was one of them, because I think the team plays a lot better when Florenzi is in the side. He makes such good passes forward. He's a very underrated server of the ball. He has a great cross.
I think he's so underrated across the board.
He plays in a great ball for Loftus-Cheek, and he actually asks a lot of questions of teams' back lines when he's able to go forward, like a Walmart brand Trent, if you will, when he's in the Milan side. I always love when he plays. He gives 110%, and that was the type of performance he put in tonight. So yeah, really good. It was good to see Pioli reintroduce some names into the team rather, and yeah, I have full expectations for Milan to at least reach the final, if I want to be honest. So we'll see.
Yeah. So Ange, real quick, what's your take on your two Chelsea transfers, Loftus-Cheek and Pulisic? Because I definitely didn't have high hopes for him, and Pulisic more early and Loftus-Cheek recently. Really look like they're kind of making a name for themselves.
6 goals in 2024 right now?
Yeah, I think it's 5 in his last 5 or something like that I saw. But to answer your question, I know I wasn't particularly pleased with Pulisic coming in, but I think the reason is that Pulisic and especially Loftus-Cheek were two players that never really got consistent playing time at any club that they've been in. They never really had
injured too, but
they never really had the love. Yeah, and always injured. And yeah, I mean, going into this season, I was concerned that I was definitely concerned with Loftus-Cheek, somebody who is seems to always be injured, especially coming into a side like Milan where a lot of Milan Twitter fans make memes of the medical staff. And I mean, look at our back line this season. I mean, we've had a ton of injuries. I think we've had the most injuries in the Serie A. And I'm knock on wood. I don't want to jinx this, but I'm shocked that Loftus-Cheek hasn't been one of the ones to pick up a long-term injury. But I mean, Loftus-Cheek has always shown the ability to play, and I think maybe it's because the pace of the Serie A is a little slower, and he's in a role where he really wants to play. Chelsea, he was never really given the license to go forward. I mean, he's playing as Milan's number 10. I mean, he's so good.
Exactly. Yeah, there was points he was playing center back, he was playing false nine, he was playing right wing. So he never really had a true position. So I mean, maybe
I think the number 10 is definitely his best position. I think even at Milan we've seen that. When he's close to the goal, that's when he's at his best.
I agree, and when he's given the license to go forward, I mean, he's shown an ability to carry the ball 50, 60, 70 yards.
Physically, he's
relatively easily. I mean, he's super imposing. He commands a ton of space. I've loved Loftus-Cheek's performances. I think he's been quietly one of our best players this season. So, yeah, I mean, hats off to the recruitment because I think they brought in two solid players, and I think it's something Milan's been doing the last couple of seasons is bringing in players. Yeah, I mean, bringing in players who had talent and never really got enough love, never really got consistent time, and it's cool to see them flourish in the red and black. So, yeah, I mean, that was a great question. I've been more pleased with Loftus-Cheek, I think, than Pulisic, just because, given my history of when I played the game, is I always played midfield, and I do tend to watch midfield battles closer than, I mean, I feel like there's 100 Pulisic's that exist, to be honest. But Loftus-Cheek, I think, has some qualities that you don't really find too often. He's pretty technical with the ball at his feet for being such a big guy. He can move, he can create space, and he definitely drags defenders out of position. He can pull the whole team forward. So he's been great. I'm glad he's been getting the love that his career has kind of always deserved. I know he's not the youngest. I mean, he's 28. It's a shame that it took him until this point in his career to nail down a starting role at a big team in Europe. But we'll see. He's somebody who I think has always deserved a chance, and it's been nice to see it be at Milan. So
can blame the Gillette Stadium turf for that one.
Yeah. And speaking on Pulisic, I think if anything, he's brought a little bit of balance because obviously Milan past couple seasons have been so left side heavy with Leao over there carrying a lot of the weight. So he's kind of brought that down on his side, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's something we talked about in the last podcast where I know Jason wasn't here, but I was kind of asking the question of what do people expect from Leao? Because last season it was this talk of being too Leao heavy, and when it's not him that's scoring, who is? I mean, Leao didn't even need to score in this game. In reality, it's nice that we have players like Loftus-Cheek and even Pulisic that can find the back of the net. So, I'm hoping for more of the same.
Yeah, and before we move, I just want to say you must feel pretty good, Ange, because like you were mentioning with the whole rotation in the midfield, I mean, Loftus-Cheek has proven in 2024 that he can put the ball in the back of the net and in big games. Like a lot of times when you guys need goals, you're not getting it from anywhere else. He's put a couple in the back of the net to win games. And then, of course, the fact that, I know you're a big fan of Benacer, and then, of course, Adley and then Musa and Reiners can all swap in those double pivot position, and they all do a really good job no matter the partnership. So you have to be really comfortable with that.
I am. I do. I honestly love the midfield room that we have right now. It's probably my favorite one since I've been a Milan fan. I know I was pretty sad when Tonali was sold, and maybe I didn't really understand the vision at the time. But I mean, I think the five midfielders we have are pretty good in my opinion. I like what the qualities they have. They all kind of have different qualities, and I think it gives. I have to give Pioli credit again because I think he's done a good job of implementing all of them, and he hasn't really asked anyone to play in a role that they're not comfortable with, which I think speaks a lot to Pioli, but we'll see. That's enough about Milan. I don't want to jinx them. We can move to Benfica now, who kind of luckily got the win, huh?
Yeah,
very lucky. Don't say kinda.
Another red team that hosted a French team, and they won on 2 pens from Di Maria, who's calm, cool, and collected, as that's what they brought him in to be. A leader and score some goals, and he scored both pens. But yeah, I think it was a bit of a scrape of a win, but I'll let Jay start before I put my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, scrape, yes, but I mean, we were the better side for sure.
Yeah,
they played better. They should be winning this, but I mean, this is one that I'm gonna put on the manager, because we've talked about this a lot. He's great at creating tactics, getting players to play better and all that stuff, but his game management is just not good. I mean, you guys have seen me in the chat. I'm ready to fire João Mario into the sun. I don't want to see him play again for this team because he's just the way they play. He doesn't fit it. He doesn't fit the style. He doesn't really do what we're looking for.
Why is it? Can you explain why? Because you do say that every Benfica game, and I kind of struggle sometimes to understand why. I know I don't watch Benfica play that closely, but why? Why do you think or like what type of profile do you like to see? Is there a player in the squad that you'd like to see start? I know you said when David Neres came off the bench that he was going to change the game. Did you think that he did, or
yeah? I'd take any forward on our bench over João Mario at this point because they all have more pace. They're more creative. And they can kind of attack. I mean, Muratu gets a lot of the stick too, which not really much of his fault, but it's more because of he's filling in for injured players and players we don't have in the team out of position. But we have nothing on the left side. Right. We rely on all of our creativity to either come through the middle, which is tough to get through because we're usually playing against a team parking the bus, or we're asking Di Maria, who I think just turned 38. 36, something like that, to carry the team, and he did again today. So I think it's really, you lose a lot by playing him in the teams. Like, yeah, he'll give you a good rating, he'll get some passes going, he'll do anything, but he tries to do more than he's capable of, and he's lost a step. So I think when we've signed all of these young players, and we have David Neres coming back from injury, I don't know why we still continue to turn to him. And like I said, after the second Neres came in, the game switched. We now had a threat on both wings. And then I was also disappointed that we subbed out that young kid left back, that Alvaro, I think Carreras.
Yeah, you've been talking about him the last couple weeks.
Yeah, he's solid, but I mean, like, yeah, he's a kid. He's gonna make a few more mistakes and kind of maybe miss a few opportunities to kind of attack that you'd get with experience. But yeah, he was subbed off after 60 minutes. I don't think he played too poor. But yeah, I don't know. I think they played well, but I think you knew very early on Arthur Cabral did not have it this game. This back line was tough for him. He didn't really find his place here, and he's played 87 minutes when I think we knew within 45 that he should be replaced for Marcos Leonardo, who scores 3 goals off the bench and still can't get a start. So I mean, there's a couple questions to be asked. I don't mind Ba not starting, but even when he came in, our right side looked better because he's a real right back. But yeah, it's just a little frustrating. This is a game where I'd like to see a little bit more of what Sporting did with the rotation and get some new players into starting positions and catch a little bit of form, because I think this is our issue is we end up having 4 or 5 players in form and we can't turn to the bench for anybody because we're just playing everybody all the time. So yeah, that's just, I mean, yeah, we got the result. I'll take it, but now we have to go away and also get a result and kind of hold out, which is going to be a little tough.
I genuinely think the squad rotation I think is a great point too, because the result kind of leaves you open to the fact that now you can't rotate in the second leg. You kind of have to go full strength now and play your best team.
Yeah. I want to say I really don't understand why Ba doesn't start this game, because
I think it's the injury thing. Ease him in.
Right, but I feel like, I mean, it's a rotation game. He ends up playing, at least half an hour, and I think he could he could play for 50 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me with Ba, I think he's so integral to this team that you really cannot lose. You can't afford to lose him the rest of the year. Right. So I'm fine with the ease him in and kind of play him short minutes.
But I mean, the substitutions I think were piss poor, to be honest with you, and I'll explain why I said that, because I think with he goes by a couple different names, but Alvaro on the left side, he played mostly a good game. I think at the moment that they were subbing him off, I think Benfica had started to lose the role, the pace of the game. I think Toulouse started to build into it, and I think he was kind of slipping. So it felt right in the moment to pull him out. So I'm not totally upset with that.
Yep,
my issue is then you force Auschnitz onto the left side. You put in Ba, of course, but then you take João Mario and put in Neres, and then Neres now with Auschnitz behind him, who isn't a true defender, right? Is now forced. Neres is not. He doesn't work defensively, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Toulouse score because Neres doesn't mark him whatsoever. And Neres, if you watch the replay, he's sleeping. He's like thinking he's gonna start a counterattack or whatever it might be. Probably high. He always looks high, right? So yeah, he brings a little bit forward, but then he doesn't bring anything back. And now you're forcing someone who isn't a true defender to do all of the defending. And then he can't keep up with it. And then, of course, Artur Cabral, I mean, he had a flash or two. I saw a couple moments where he actually almost had a really nice finish at the Toulouse keeper actually stood his ground, had a nice right hand onto the ball and kept it out of the net. But besides that, it doesn't apply much to the game. And then Marcus Leonardo gets, 5 minutes in the game, has a little bit of something. But
draws a penalty.
But
those 5 minutes was the most we got out of the position the entire game. So it's just that's the tough part. Because, I mean, Arthur Cabral's been great. I don't mind him starting the game. I don't mind him giving some extra minutes. But when he's a type of player like his... Is that right? He's been playing very well.
All right.
He's playing very well.
Arthur Cabral sucks.
In recent weeks, he's been playing.
Yeah, the last 3-4 weeks,
heard that right from you.
He's been great. I mean, I still stand by. He has a certain player profile that fits certain scenarios, or rather, is really bad in certain scenarios. I think this is a game where he doesn't fit. So I think they should have realized it a bit earlier, and moved on to either Marcos Leonardo or even Tengsted, just something different. And I think that's what this was missing. Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to rotation, dude, I'm concerned. I don't want Di Maria playing 90 minutes every week, especially if we're going to go through this run of games where we're playing every 3 days.
Right.
Like, I want some rotation. I want some of these young kids to get some time and rely on other players, because one injury in any of Rafa, Di Maria, João Neves, we're screwed. Season's over.
I generally don't understand too, because besides we talked about, you weren't here, Jay, but we did talk about the weird lineup that they fielded against Vitória de Guimarães, and obviously it wasn't a good result. But you did have almost all of your starting players, right? You realize we didn't play all that well. João Mario got subbed off at halftime. Why? Because you must have known he played poorly. Bob played the full 90, so I don't even know how much I can agree with you. Not saying that he shouldn't get rested, but how much Roger Schmidt is actually even worried about his injury, because he plays a full 90 at the weekend. And why he doesn't introduce a single player besides Fernandes on the left back. No other player comes in that isn't a usual starter. And it's unreal to me. Like, when you have Tengsted, who's touted to have a lot of potential, you have Florentino Luis, who plays every now and then. Why not playing him in the cup match where he can hold down the midfield to give Neves a break? You have even Tomás Araújo, who's been playing really well when he gets in. It just doesn't make sense why you don't give anyone else a chance from the get-go. I don't know. I think Roger Schmidt is losing it a little bit sometimes.
I think the weird lineup they fielded last week would have actually worked great in this game, because I think that would fit it. But when you're going into in that situation last game, when it comes to the field conditions and everything, I think it just didn't make sense. So I mean, I'm worried about the game management piece. That's really it, and the player management, because tactically, I mean, we look fantastic. Like, these guys are pulling stuff out of their ass that I haven't seen Benfica players do in a while, and we have some fantastic talent. And the level of play has increased in almost every player since Roger Schmidt has arrived. But I still can't get over the way we kind of fall apart, because we can't rotate and we can't look to the bench for anybody, because nobody's been playing consistently enough.
Yeah.
So
can I ask Nate and Jay? Can I ask you guys? I don't know if this is a dumb question, but it's a question that intrigues me. Because you guys are both pretty much competing for the same trophies this season. Yep. You guys are neck and neck in the league. You're playing each other in the semifinals of the League Cup, and you're both in the Europa League as well. Would you guys be disappointed, or would you be happy with being knocked out of the Europa League so you can focus more on the league?
I'll let you answer.
For me, I would.
I already know.
I would be disappointed getting knocked out. I'd be very disappointed knocked out. One, because I think we should be competing in this. I think we should be good enough to be competing in Champions League, realistically. We had a horrible campaign. So I would be disappointed. I don't know about how Nate feels.
I'm surprised you think you know what I'm going to say, Ange. I mean, of course.
Can I guess?
Yeah, actually, please. I want to see.
You don't give a fuck if you get knocked out of the Europa League this year.
Really? You think so?
You don't give a fuck, dude. No, I would. If I were you, I wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, I probably would be less upset than Jay.
Yeah,
I'll agree.
definitely less upset than Jay.
I'd be less upset than Jay. I think if we go, I'd be very upset if we go on to lose this leg at home. I think that would be the most upset. But if we go on to the next round, get a challenging opponent, and we put up a good fight and get knocked out, I'm not going to be overly upset because, of course, like you said, now all our efforts go into the league. We don't have to rotate almost ever. We'll just play one game a week besides the cup matches, which is only 3 games left anyway of that. So yeah, I think Benfica should be looking more towards this Europa League than Sporting should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we have the deeper team for it, but we're just not using it.
Yeah. I was going to say, because personally for me, like when I look at Benfica's squad, they should be competing to make the final at least or in the semifinals.
We've got 3 center backs that should be playing, 3 center mids that could be playing at any time, 4 wingers that could be playing at any time, 2 strikers that could play at any time. So I mean, we should do it, but we're just not taking advantage of what we have.
For me, like for Sporting, it almost feels like you guys are built to go win the league this year. Yeah. You know, the cup competitions aren't really your focus.
Yeah. I would have to agree that I think Sporting has built this team right now to get this quick short-term success. It's not super deep. We don't want to win a whole lot of competitions. But in terms of form, we're playing excellent, so we have the ability to go win the league. I think Benfica actually are the exact opposite, to the point where they have less of a good form right now, but more players that can compete in the first 11. You know what I mean?
They have a team more built for cup competitions.
Right.
Benfica.
Right.
More experience.
Yeah.
Can we open up the question or kind of branch it out? I want to ask you guys what's your expectation for the Europa League now? We've played a game. I know it's still early doors, but where do you guys expect your individual teams to finish? How far do you think you guys get in the Europa League? Because I'll start. I honestly fully expect Milan to get to the final. We don't have to win, but I think anything short of the semifinals, I think is a failure, in my opinion.
I think I'm in the same boat, but I think definitely before this game. After this game, I'm concerned if we can get there, but I think it's still the expectation.
Got you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you have to look at the competition that's still left in this cup. I know eventually we're going to get some of these heavyweights. There's a lot of good teams. Some of these heavyweights are going to play each other really early, right? I mean, we still have that are not playing in this, what they call a knockout round. Leverkusen's not playing yet. Slavia Prague, okay, Villarreal, but then we still have Liverpool and Atalanta. Rangers have been pretty competitive this season. I mean, Brighton, we know, are a class team, and they will not play down to anyone. And then, of course, West Ham is up and down, but they can perform really well on the occasion. So
Marseille, I think, right?
Yeah, Marseille is in this knockout round. We didn't mention the game, but still, these are big teams.
To speak of Marseille, I think I just saw today Aubameyang is the Europa League's top goal scorer all time.
Wow.
He's out today.
Talk about mid.
Yeah. It is insane. So it depends. I think this Europa League is going to be a lot about, and it's pretty obvious and easy to say, but it's going to be a lot about what matchups happen when, because there's so many really big teams that if there's a team that could easily win this game, but if they get a big matchup, don't perform early on in the competition, they're knocked out. But in hindsight, they could have won the whole thing. So it's tough to call it. I think Sporting should make a good account of themselves, probably get into the last 8 or so in the quarterfinals potentially. I think they're good enough in terms on form. But I mean, if they don't make the semis, I'm not going to cry about it. I think quarterfinals would be a respectable run, especially if we come up against a Liverpool or an Atalanta or a Bayer Leverkusen. You know what I mean? And of course, any of you guys. What about you, G?
For me personally, I think we'll be lucky to even make it past Feyenoord, honestly.
good.
That's good.
I'm being like so realistic right now. I really believe that we'll be looking to make it past this round. And if we do make it past this round, I think the round of 16 will be as far as we go. I think the likelihood that we draw a team that is stronger than us, better than us, and just more well prepared in every facet at this point in the season right now is going to be drawn against us, and they're just going to make easy work of us. So to be quite honest with you, I think my hopes are pretty much dashed for the Europa League this season already.
I kind of hope one of us get matched up in the next round. I think I'd love to see it. It'd be fun.
It would be awesome. It would be
My next question was at what point can you draw teams from your same country? Is it?
It's got to be quarters, right?
I think it's next round, but
none of the playoff teams will draw each other.
Playoff versus group winners. I think that's the way.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I don't think any of us can play each other next round.
Right.
Yeah, we can't.
Oh, that's actually kind of sick.
Yeah.
So we'll meet each other late if we do.
Yeah. If we're gonna play each other, it's gonna be an important game. That's for sure.
Nice.
There are just 3 more games across the competitions that I just want to quickly mention. We won't dive too deep in them. Before we wrap up Europa League, Braga got messed up at home. Obviously, they had a poor performance at the weekend at the hands of Sporting, who completely dominated them. I would have thought they would have tried to bounce back in this game at home against Karabag, but they got bounced 4-2. It was a tough match. They just couldn't get in it. I mean, Karabag, it's not a team that we talk about too often, but there's a couple names in here that, real soccer nerds, real streets will never forget kind of names are in here. I mean, you do have Zubir, who's a Moroccan player. He's really good. I've seen him come around. I think he played in Liga. Marko Jankovic played in the Serie A for a while. Yeah. His name gets passed around,
Benzia.
Yeah, Benzia.
Benzia, what a throwback he was. Seeing him play today.
I know. Even the likes of for me and Jay a little bit. A player
Juninho, right?
Juninho too up top. He plays. Yeah. He played in the Portuguese league. So there's a couple names in here. They've played at semi high levels and they have the experience. So it's not like they were unprepared or they're not talented. So. Braga just didn't go into this game very well. Salazar still had a decent performance. I'm going to keep saying his name.
Tough run for them. But I would definitely be concerned if I'm Arthur George.
Yeah, his head is on the block. I think
their president is kind of known for having a short leash, so that's something to keep an eye out.
Yeah,
it sucks for them. They've lost all their big games the last couple weeks. Feel bad.
Yeah, I want to give a shout.
I mean, they won the cup final, but they lost to Benfica, lost to Porto, lost to Sporting last week. Obviously, they've shipped 9 goals in 2 games. So. Yeah. Just like Crystal Palace, or was it West Ham? West Ham has
a lot of goals.
Yeah.
I want to give a little shout out. I was texting my cousins about the games, and he made a funny, poor translation from a Portuguese saying, but he said that Arthur George was cooking without a stove. But it's making sense because we've touted this Braga team. They made a lot of good transfers, right? And they have the material, to play good games, and I don't know what's going on tactically. He's just not getting it right. So it was just a funny thing he said, but it's true nonetheless. And then 2 games that I wanted to shout out from the Conference League. In my opinion, it wasn't super exciting as of yet. I think it'll get better a little bit later, and there's still a couple of teams in the Conference League that could do some damage, could have some fun games. But at 2 games we did have the USG versus Frankfurt. 2 bigger sides in their respective leagues too, having some ups and downs in their seasons. USG is one of the better teams in Belgium, but they touted a 2-2 game. USG went down to 10 men at one point, but this was a fun little game. There are a couple of really good players on either side, I think. So just an interesting one to watch out for the second leg. I think that if you're a little bored next week and you want to watch a game, this is one you could definitely watch if you have nothing else to see. And then, of course, we also had Ajax, who we know we've been talking about has had a pretty poor season. They're trying to climb the Eredivisie again. They're trying to make up for it. And they tried here. They managed to salvage a goal. They were down 2-0 until the 90th minute, and they scored 2 in extra time, which is unreal. But Bodo Glimt keeps popping up. I know that'll be a team that
Norwegian nightmares.
G knows well. But they pull out some performances. Obviously, they must have felt comfortable going into the 90th minute.
I gotta be honest with you. I watched a bit of this game today, and every time I see this Bodo Glimt team play, they just play some outstanding football. I mean, the brand of soccer that they play is great. It's so easy and so pleasing on the eye. Both goals that they scored, they really ripped Ajax to shreds.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one especially, it's only a 4 or 5 pass move up the field, and they absolutely got cut to ribbons. I wanted to shout out Jens Peter Hauge. I thought he was brilliant in this game. The Milan fans will know him pretty well. He was pretty highly rated when he came over to the Serie A, and then. For me, I was saying to Angelo earlier today, he kind of just dropped off the face of the earth to me. I completely forgot about Jens Peter Hauge completely. And then they showed him in the game today. I was like, holy shit, that's him. I can't believe it. But yeah, I thought he was great today. I think he really made a name for himself. I believe he's on loan from Frankfurt as well, if I'm not mistaken. So it could be one to watch out for if he does get a move back there. But I thought he was brilliant today.
Well, what a fall from grace Ajax have had, because, I mean, the team they're throwing out there just is so unimpressive. It's
the
really
youngsters
bad.
are finally not that good. In my opinion.
It's not only that. Like they've always had some sort of good experienced players in there too to kind of
Right.
Yeah, there's really no leadership in this team.
They don't have anything. So I mean, it's a little disappointing. I mean, granted, after their awful start to the year, they've been in a very good run, specifically in the league. Like they've managed to get themselves, I believe, back up to fifth.
Fifth place.
Right.
So considering how bad they were at the start, I think they were 9 games they were in relegation zone still.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty impressive. I mean they're 24 points off PSV, but still, it's very very disappointing to see a club like that in that position.
I agree. I think it is disappointing, and I think if they go out of the playoff and don't get to the next round, now I mean they do have to go away for the next leg, and they have to win the game.
We all know how hard it is to go to Bodo Glimt.
Yeah, Gianluca especially. So I think Ajax, I think if there's any chance of Ajax salvaging some sort of pride from this season, it would be to make a run here in the Conference League. But think about what we're saying. I mean, if you said 30 years ago that Ajax are going to play in the third worst European competition that didn't even exist yet at the time, this is a team that I think holds, 3 Champions League trophies. It's just remarkable to even think about. It's insane. It's kind of sad, and fall from grace it's definitely that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I do try to watch the Eredivisie, and I just think there's no youngsters that really excite me in this team anymore. It's just sad. Kenneth Taylor, I feel like, I mean, he's only 21, but like he hasn't gotten his move yet, and even some of the exports that Ajax have had the last couple seasons, the youngsters kind of haven't found their way into big teams. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm sure the philosophy's always been the same since the Cruyff days, and I back them to find their feet again, at least in the Eredivisie for next season. But yeah, it's been a weird season. I think they kind of have to progress, or else, I don't know, those Ajax fans are tough. You talk about Bayern kind of having this elitist mentality. I feel like the Ajax fans definitely have it too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Sometimes, and they've been getting punched in the mouth by PSV and Feyenoord the last couple seasons. And I mean, you look at the performances that those teams are having. I mean, PSV is going to play pretty soon in the knockout stages of the Champions League, right?
Yeah.
And even
Feyenoord this season, right? PSV?
Yeah, still haven't lost, and even Feyenoord today hosting a team like Roma and being the better side for 90 minutes. I think Ajax, I don't think Ajax are anywhere close to being in the position of doing that. So,
which is funny, because I actually think this is really good for the Eredivisie.
Oh, it's great.
You're getting the I don't want to say smaller teams, because they're still huge clubs, but I mean Ajax dominated for years. And now you finally got some competition with some of these other clubs getting a chance to really compete for a title. So, I mean, it's funny, the Eredivisie's never been stronger, but I don't think Ajax has ever been weaker.
Right.
No, they haven't.
Yeah, and I think with hindsight, it's been a slow, steady decline for Ajax, because even their most recent best team, when De Jong and De Ligt plied their trade there, and they went on that crazy Champions League run and knocked Real Madrid out. Even I think De Jong and De Ligt have gone on to have good careers, but still I don't think they reached the levels of other former Ajax products. Like Luis Suarez, one of the best strikers we've seen. Zlatan, and they just don't meet it.
The levels we expected of them.
Even just from their potential, exactly. Hasn't finished out quite right. But to wrap it all up, we will do a quick 5-a-side for our Europe competitions this week. As always, our goalkeeper resident, G, who I know you already said you had a name. Please throw it out there.
Yes, I do. Angelo did say it earlier. It was Andre Lunin. He had his best performance, I think, in Real Madrid so far in his young career, so I think he deserves the shout.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't argue with that at all. He kept them at bay, and I think Real Madrid win that game mostly because of his performance too.
Yeah, absolutely.
For defenders, Ange, do you want to throw a name out there, or Jay, if you have one?
I don't know if I have a defender.
I have a name. I actually was pretty pleased with a former Milan player yesterday, and it was Alessio Romagnoli, somebody who doesn't always catch the eye with his defensive ability, but I thought he played pretty well. He was confident. He kept Harry Kane quiet at home with the Olympico. He obviously helped Lazio to go on to keep a clean sheet. And when you're in a back four and you have the best performance against a Bayern team who failed to have a shot on target, I think that's pretty good, if you ask me. So Romagnoli impressed me, but some other guys, I thought PSG's backline was pretty good. Marquinhos in particular, I agree, because Sociedad definitely were pressing the hell out of them in the first half, and I think if Sociedad would have grabbed a goal, like we were saying when we talked about the game, it might have been a tie. So either one of them, I think the Lazio result was more shocking, in my opinion. So I'd like to pick Alessio Romagnoli.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I have to agree.
Yeah, I have to agree because I think, well, like we said, Bayern didn't have their best game, but they still went out there. They still had some firepower, and they managed to keep that clean sheet, which is super important, obviously, against such a big team. So I would agree that Romagnoli was in there. And then, Ange, I know you're excited to say this, so I'll let you say it, but I think we have a pretty simple pick for midfield with the brace, but please shout your name.
Yeah, I already have it written down on our little Word doc going on, but it's got to be Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I mean, I thought he was like quite literally head and shoulders above the competition today. 2 headers, but it was a real good all-round performance. He showed his class. He showed his strength again. So I'm all in on Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, I'll throw a shout for De Bruyne.
Yeah, he was good too.
If you want to consider him a forward or mid, maybe it's more for flex. Each had a goal and assist, so I'll give them a quick shout too.
I can't believe I'm going to do it, but I'm going to shout a Lazio player. I thought Guendouzi was fantastic. I think he at least deserves a mention.
Yeah, I know he was good. I said that earlier too. I thought he was the best player in that game, but I got to go with Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, I think Loftus-Cheek deserves that one. Forward position, maybe I'm mistaken, but I think it's slightly a tough one because I didn't think we had too many standouts. I know Jay is going to want to throw Di Maria out there for his brace. But I just think I don't think in open play Di Maria played all that well. G, I'm kind of going there. I know G, he's going to throw that.
No, it wasn't his best game, but I think he did also was the source of most of that attack, most of that creativity in that game. And he did end up scoring the 2 penalties. Granted, they were penalties, but he still got to score them. I mean, I'll give him that benefit. But I'm happy to include anyone else if you guys got somebody.
I wanted to shout Igor Paixão. I thought he was brilliant today. I mean, he was a ridiculous, like on another level. Honestly, he was the best player on the field by a mile. He was finding space in every area and every attack. We really couldn't do anything about him today at all. So I think he deserves a mention.
I actually give a name because I actually I know it might not have been one of his best performances, but I was pretty impressed with Mbappe. To be honest, I thought Mbappe was pretty good. He was making things happen for PSG as he always does. But yeah, I agree. I'm having a hard time thinking names that stood out attacking wise. Really, only 2 for me were Mbappe and Paixão. Maybe Di Maria would have stood out to me if I actually watched the game, but Milan was playing at the same time, so I didn't. But I don't know. I'll give it to you guys to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, you could even mention, it just depends on where we put players in the field, because I know Foden gets really forward, but I still classify him as a midfielder. Brahim Diaz, I think, had an excellent game. I just don't know if I qualify him as a forward. It's tough. I think the conversation for flex is going to go midfield. Heavy bias. But I think Paixão deserves a shout. I think if you're, especially for coming from G, who obviously suffered at the hands of him, is able to say that about him. I think that's a good quality. I think Sporting's forwards play really well as well today, but nothing to stand out for as a sort of man of the week performance. So I can give it to Paixão. I think that's my vote.
Yeah, I think he was definitely the most impressive forward I saw this week.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. And for flex, I did mention I think it's going to go to a midfielder. We had a couple of shouts. I don't think it was an easy decision for the best player, but second best midfielder this week, I don't think it was a simple one. I know we already mentioned KDB, Foden, Guendouzi. Who did I just finish mentioning that I'm blanking out? Brahim Diaz. You know what I mean. So this is a couple of good players. So it's going to be tough if anybody wants to solidify a pick for this vote.
I like Brahim Diaz.
Tough.
I think I like that. Something about that goal just really reminded me of Messi. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the way he moved his body and the fact that he hit it with his left foot and curled it to the far post. But
I'm telling you, dude,
I like this performance, especially filling in Jude's role.
People are going to be like shockingly surprised at Brahim Diaz's ability to receive the ball 70 yards away from goal, drop his shoulder.
Year in and year out at Milan now.
Dude, I'm telling you, he's one of the few players I've ever seen do it. I likened him to Ricky Kaká a couple of times, to be honest. Yeah. He has scored a couple Kaká-esque goals where he picks it up around the halfway line and makes his way down the field in blistering fashion. I'm fine with. I don't mind. We got a couple former Milan guys in this team. I like this.
Yeah, I think Brahim Diaz. He gets my vote personally. I think my next pick was either Foden or KDB because I think Foden actually managed to outshine KDB a little bit. I know we've been having that conversation how he's been in such good form before. De Bruyne came back from injury, but I think Brahim Diaz had to fill in, and Jude Bellingham has been putting Real Madrid on his back when they didn't have all their firepower, and he filled that role really, really well, like we already mentioned. So I think he deserves the credit from us as one of the best players of the week.
I agree.
Not mad about it. Perfect. We are in agreement. So it was another good week of the Europe. We have another round of Champions League fixtures, different teams this time. The same teams in the Europa League and Conference League will be duking it out next week, so that's going to be really fun and exciting. All of us will be here again to talk about our clubs, but then a new round of Champions League teams. We'll also be talking about the league games at the weekend, so make sure you catch that video as well. It's going to be a lot of double sessions for us over the next couple weeks, but this is what we're passionate about. It's what we love doing, and we hope you love it too. So have a great weekend. We will see you next time, and keep on being Son of a Pitch.